Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Yay! Hi. Hello,
Hi,
Mariaemma.
Hi, Dawn.
Hi, my name's Dawn Jackson. I am with Dawn Jackson Coaching and Solomar Academy. And I'm here today with a wonderful, I can't say part two, but my second time interviewing you here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. And I just want to share a little bit about you. So I have, my guest today is a trailblazer in the field of education. As an educational therapist, and learning success coach, she has spent over 3 decades empowering families to help their children succeed by embracing their unique learning styles. Mariaemma is the co-author of the Self-Portrait Power Traits Assessment and the popular book, Discover Your Child's Learning Style, along with a host of other resources designed to make learning engaging and joyful. Her innovative approaches have helped countless students thrive, and her work continues to inspire parents and educators like me. Mariaemma's passion is to ensure that learning doesn't have to hurt, and instead it can be a lighthearted, fulfilling journey. We're excited to dive into her expertise today and discover new ways to support our unique learners. So please join me, everyone, in welcoming Mariaemma Willis.
Thank you, Dawn. It's nice to be here again.
I know. So we talked a little bit before we jumped on to just about jumping into the questions, because we have a lot of great stuff today planned. And if you're a parent listening to this, if you're thinking about homeschooling, you're kind of teary-eyed or worried, take out a notepad today, because we're really going to cover some amazing information about how your child learns. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. So are you ready? So we're going to jump in.
I'm ready. And
so first, go ahead.
Can you click on the PowerPoint?
Not yet. I will.
Oh,
you want me to do that right away? Okay. Okay. So I will. I'm going to pull up that PowerPoint right now. Yeah. There it is. So my first question today is, how can parents create an environment where students feel encouraged to take risks and make mistakes as part of the learning process?
Okay, so that is a great question, and it goes right in with this, which is that the number one thing you need for learning, real learning to take place, is safety. And so, a lot of parents will go, what do you mean? It's safe, we're at home. But there are lots of kinds of safety. There's the physical safety, of course, like, if students are afraid, and I know this is going on in schools nowadays, so if you're afraid that, something bad's going to happen, you can't think about learning because you're afraid for yourself, right?
Right.
That's one kind of safety, but there's also emotional safety. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that says, like, nobody's gonna, like, if I can't get this math, or I don't understand what she just said or he just said, nobody's gonna laugh at me, or if I ask a question, nobody's gonna say, well, that's a stupid question, or weren't you listening? Because a lot of times we say that, or think that anyway, weren't you listening? Well, they could be listening and still not understand what you were trying to ask or say. So this is very important. No one will laugh, scold, or punish me if I don't get something, if I don't understand something. And then learning safety is kind of the same as emotional safety. The mistakes are okay. And I always say, like, well, sometimes teachers do this too, and parents as teachers, or anybody, even coaches in the field, will say, why did you do that? You're not supposed to do that. Or didn't you learn about that yet? Well, if if the child knew everything, he wouldn't have to be in school. Right? So, I mean, that's part of learning. And you might make the same mistake several times because you don't have it down yet. And, and that should be okay, that you can try things out. You can see if it works. You can do it again and it still doesn't work. It's kind of like when kids are learning to ride a bike or tie a shoelace or something. You don't expect them to do it that very first time. And, usually adults don't say to the child, oh my gosh, you got a D in bike riding today. I hope you do better tomorrow. I mean, nobody says that because you get it. It's a developmental, it's, you gotta get there. It's stages of learning. And so it's the same with this. It doesn't matter how old you are, what grade you're in, because you could be in the 6th grade and not understand fractions. And you could be in the 2nd grade and understand them. It just depends on the learner. So this is very important for learning. And that's how you create that space.
I'll share on that learning safety piece, just as a teacher and a credentialed teacher, that what I see a lot of times is, even coming from the teacher, the general education teacher, I'm a special ed, but general ed, there's this criteria for every student. And if you don't meet it, there is a shaming process that can happen. Because teachers have a very set schedule. They're very rigid oftentimes, and they want to accomplish so much every day. And if you're more of a different kind of a learner that takes time to maybe talk about it or work it through, there's no time for that. There's just no time. And so instead, they will kind of call on the special ed department to take care of that one because they fall out of that.
But at home, if the parent, most parents just went to traditional school. So even if they didn't like it or thought, it could be different, if you don't know that there are other possibilities as the parent teacher, you think, oh, well, I think that's the way it has to be. So you might duplicate what's going on in the classroom. So here we're informing you and giving you information and even permission that no, it doesn't have to be, teaching doesn't have to be that way. Learning doesn't have to be that way.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Yes, it is. Amazing. Yeah. So learning doesn't have to hurt. That's the whole thing. It doesn't have to hurt. It can be fun and engaging. I'm not saying it's never going to be hard. It can be hard, but it doesn't have to hurt, which means shaming, feeling less than, even depression. I'm never going to learn this. I'm stupid. All of that. You don't want that. And success leads to more success. So if a child or even an adult, if you're learning something new and you keep not getting it and you think everybody else is, that's not going to help you continue and think, okay, well, if I keep going, I will be successful. No, you have to have some successful experiences in that new thing in order to believe that you can be successful. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. And then we always say coaching brings out the star. Act as one of those wonderful, amazing coaches that you've heard of that, just encourage their students or their, what do you call them? Like even athletes, the coaches that know how to push in the right way. And to bring out that star. Yeah.
We have some stories around that one.
Yeah.
That's a good stories.
We call it adjustable seats. You have adjustable seats in cars and planes and everywhere. And in fact, there's a whole TED talk about this, which I love. And the whole idea is, you know, actually in the military, they used to have, well, planes that had all same kind of seat, you know, like the pilots that piloted these planes. It was as if everybody was average, but it
Mm-hmm.
left out a whole bunch of people. If they were shorter or taller or longer legs or whatever, they could not be a great pilot because the seats didn't move. And so actually the military figured out, wait, why can't we make them adjustable at everywhere? Because you might have longer arms with shorter legs. You might have
Yeah.
this or that. Nobody is totally average in every single aspect. And it's the same, you know,
Right.
with our brains for learning. Nobody has all of the average qualities of, we say average learner, but there's really no such thing. And
Right.
so we have the equivalent of adjustable seats, and we call them the power traits for life. These are different aspects of learning styles or learning strengths. There's the dispositions, modalities, talents, interests, environment, and each one is composed of different characteristics here. And we're not going to cover everything here today because there's a lot, but we will cover a lot of it to show
Mm-hmm.
how all of this goes into making a safe environment, a great learning environment, an encouraging environment.
That's great.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so that's my cue, I think. Okay,
well,
wait a second. I think I have a
I thought you
question.
were just taking it in, soaking it in.
I was kind of taking it into like about our assessments and everything, but I want to ask then on what are the key signs that a student has a growth mindset or a mindset that's even aware of their strengths versus a fixed mindset? And how can parents foster a growth mindset in the homeschool environment?
Okay, well, that's a big question here. So, kids that, and it goes for adults as well, but especially younger kids as they're starting out, you know, the whole learning journey, um, when they see themselves being successful, that gives them a growth mindset. Like, for example, I was the perfect school student, and this is part of why I went into this whole field.
Mm-hmm.
Because from the time I started school, I didn't even speak English when I started kindergarten because we
Oh,
spoke Italian in my house. My mom didn't speak English, so my
I
dad,
didn't know that.
yeah, so they were
Oh,
both from Italy, but my dad had been here already and he spoke English with a very heavy accent, but my mom knew no English. And so it was all Italian in my house. And so when I started kindergarten, I didn't speak a word of English. And I don't even remember not speaking English. I mean, I just remember I went to school and I spoke English. That does
interesting.
not happen with everybody, you know,
Right.
because there are so many kids who go to school not speaking English and they don't have that language strength where they can just switch over. But I did. And so because I had that language strength that went into spelling and reading and everything, um, so I was the perfect school student. I was the A student from the minute I started till I finished, you know, my master's in special ed. And I
Right.
also have a lifetime teaching credential in California for regular and special ed. But when I even was in elementary school, I remember thinking, why are those kids so dumb? The kids that were getting D's and F's. Why don't they just do their work? What is wrong with them? And I was always interested in that. And
Mm,
especially because the kids that did get those poor grades, I knew they knew more than I did.
mm,
They were like geniuses at science and history and geography. They knew everything because I would hear them, like if the teacher asked a question, they would have all this information, but they
right.
couldn't pass the test. They were terrible at spelling. They were terrible at writing, you know, all of that
Wow.
A student stuff that you need. And so that's why I went into this, because first I thought, oh, they have learning problems, they have this, and I majored in that in college. And then I realized after getting my master's, that wasn't all of it. Kids are just different. People are different, and they learn differently. And I started to learn about that outside of my master's, and then started creating my own materials, and then met Victoria, who became my business partner, and we created this self-portrait and our book and lots of other things, because that was our goal. Let's not make any other kids go through this of what we saw when we were in school, right? So if you are failing every day at everything, it could be at home or it could be at a traditional classroom. But if every day you look at that math and you go, no, another page of math, and I don't get it, and I don't even know, I'm by accident, I'm getting some of them right, and I don't get it. Or it could be any subject, right? You will never have a growth mindset.
Right.
So you have to have some successes and see that it's possible to learn. And that's what this is about. Find out how your child learns. What are their learning strengths? How do they best get that information into their brains? And when are they not ready maybe to do that? You know, most kids aren't ready to learn to read when they're 5, 6, or even 7.
Right.
Especially boys, they're not ready till 8 or 9. And if we start cramming it when they're younger, then they see they can't do it right away. That shuts everything down, and that's the start of not having a growth mindset. So
it's so true.
Have them have successes, and when we look at all of their strengths, like is in this chart, dispositions, modalities, etc., then we can gear and customize the program for those strengths. Then they're going to go, oh, wow, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Oh, maybe I can do this. And then they can figure out and they learn how to learn.
I love that. I know a lot of the work that I do with students is coaching them in their strength. Because once you have that, it's kind of like stabilizing the central nervous system. We just did a podcast on that. But it's like this awareness of who they are, right? And that they're so valuable and so precious. But it's not something like we have to tell them. It's like, here's proof. This is what you...
Right. Yes, and kids who are not used to that, oh my gosh, they're like, everything changes. Their whole facial expression. I mean, you can see it sort of like coming from the inside, like, oh, I can do this. You know, that's a whole different feeling for them.
You and I and Victoria have talked extensively how sometimes I struggle with the youngers, when the littles, the kindergartners, when they're sitting there, I walk into their classroom and, you know, gone are the days of the interactive play. I mean, they still do that, but it's very controlled. It's not like ongoing. But there's, you know, that emphasis on writing and reading sight words already, which, you know, I don't mind that in like a fun kind of relaxed way, but it's part of the curriculum and they're measured by that.
Yes, it's too bad.
And some kids, like I look at some of those and I'm telling you, boys and girls, it's not just boys anymore, that are just, they're a deer in the headlight, you know, deer with the headlights in their eyes, and their brain is just not ready for it. It's just developmentally, you know, that's why I love classical education, because it talks about the developmental stages of a child's learning. But not all children are at that level, especially if they have, you know, learning challenges, physical challenges, speech challenges, hearing challenges, geez, you know, and it's hard to measure hearing when they're little, or their eyes, or they're dyslexic.
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of stuff can show up. So anyway, keep going.
And even just regular old, I'm sort of going to say average in a way, just regular kids. They're not all ready to do that. I was ready to read.
Yeah, you were born ready.
5, you know, and people are. But it's a
Yep.
very small percentage, because in any classroom, traditional classroom of, I don't know, 25 to 30 kids, we had 40 when I was in elementary school. It was a private Catholic school, and we had 40 kids.
Wow.
But only 3 to 5 get all the A's in any
Right.
classroom, because that's the percentage of kids who have the magic formula of all these things we're going to talk about today, the
Mhm.
exact right strengths for the traditional type classroom. And if you're doing that at home, you're duplicating it. So we hope that you will feel free after this to really customize and change things up, and, you know, do it for your own child's learning strengths. So the dispositions are our learning personalities. They can show up at an early age, 2 or 3 years old. Already you're seeing, you know how parents will say, oh, that's my little debater.
Yeah.
That's my little attorney. Or,
Right.
oh, that's
Very.
my kid that can, you know, draw anything, because they're already drawing when they're little kids. Or that's my kind one. Not to say that the others aren't, but it's like you can really see already how they're so considerate of other kids and adults, and they want to help everybody, right?
Help.
So you
Yeah.
can see these things very early on. And these are the dispositions. And quickly, spontaneous disposition, so the word is move. They need to move. And they learn best when they're doing and moving and, you know, manipulating, that kind of stuff. The organized is the plan. That's me. And you need that to be really high if you're going to survive in a typical traditional classroom or even homeschool environment. So that's, you know, you plan, you make lists, you have a calendar. I mean, I did all of that when I was 5. I was already like, it's just natural. It's like I would
Yeah.
make schedules for the day.
Wow, that's so cute.
I mean, at home, I would make schedules for the day, right? So my brother never from me, and he thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
Like I, you know, would have like, okay, so we play for an hour, we rest for 15 minutes, we watch this show on TV, then we eat lunch, then we go. He's going, what? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I want. He was spontaneous and imaginative. Now I know.
Yeah.
Curious, that's the little scientist. And it could
Mhm.
be in anything. It could be, cooking, or it's all about experimenting and trying things out and asking a million questions. And this type can get in trouble, even adults, for asking questions, tons of questions. Sometimes the questions don't sound like they are related to anything you're doing.
Right.
Or you're
Right.
learning this in history, and then the person asks a question that sounds like, where'd that come from? But I promise you, it's connected, because they were hearing what you were saying or what they were reading, and it triggered this stuff over here, which is how brilliant innovations come about. That's that kind of brain, that sort of scientific brain. Supportive, it's all about interact, make sure everything is fair and harmonious, and work with others, collaborate. And imaginative is, those are the people that often we say daydreamers, because there's so much in their heads coming up with new ideas, and
Yeah.
artists can be included in that. Authors maybe. I know we've talked about it, Dawn, because I
Mhm.
think that's your highest, right?
It's somewhere
Imaginative.
between imaginative and spontaneous and curious. And I was thinking to myself, boy, that's a bomb waiting to go off right there. Spontaneous, curious, imaginative child. Like, they don't stop moving, they don't stop talking, they don't stop thinking. I mean, we really have to
Yeah,
practice.
so if you're spontaneous and imaginative, chances are, if you're an adult right now, that you might have been labeled ADD or ADHD in school, and maybe your child is spontaneous and imaginative, and you're wondering about that. So,
Yeah.
well, in my work, we never label anybody.
Right.
We just look at strengths. Oh, that's a spontaneous learner. Of course he has to move. Oh, that's an imaginative learner. Of course, or curious or whichever. And there are better ways to present information or for them to learn depending on which one of these they are. And they carry that into adulthood. So if they learn now how to work with these strengths, it'll be with them forever.
And let me just ask this question, tagging on to this slide.
Yeah.
What are the potential consequences of a child developing a negative disposition toward learning early on? Like, I can think of one in general, but what would you say? Like, say the child was spontaneous as a little youngster, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Put him in a kindergarten class where he has to sit and not move until they say move. And now that part of his learning disposition is being kind of squelched or
Yeah.
How would that impact their learning early on?
Yeah, it impacts everything and their attitude toward learning. It's like, first of all, little kids are supposed to be moving anyway.
Right.
Even apart from these dispositions, because as you're growing, that's how you learn more, through play.
Right.
And it could be imaginative play, it could be big play, climbing, running, whatever. But definitely there are kids that are in kindergarten, even preschool, that are more active than other kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was a pretty quiet, sit down. I liked to color already when I was little, and there are those kids. Not that I didn't also like to run and do things, but I could sit if I needed to. Some other kids, it's just so anti who they are. They need to be moving to learn. So it impacts right away. They learn right away that young, either in pre-K or K, I don't belong here.
Right.
There's something wrong with me. So, well, it goes to one of two ways. There's something wrong with me, or I hate this place. They don't know what they're doing, kind of thing, they might not be thinking those exact words, but it's either this is a terrible place or there's something terrible about me.
Yeah.
One or the other. So it definitely impacts
I can see
their
that.
attitude toward learning from then on.
Right.
And see, these are the school preferred dispositions, the organized, and they're only about 10% of people in the population, and supportive. Because if you have those two, which I do, it's like, you're first of all, you're organized, you get all of the everything is done on time and handed in, and you don't forget your assignments, and then supportive, you want to be collaborative and work with others and work with the teacher and so on. So this is part of the magic formula.
Right.
Doing well.
Yeah.
And so the actual population, there are about 30% of people in the population that are imaginative. And again, these are often labeled ADD. Curious, 25 to 30% of the population, they're often labeled ADD. And spontaneous is often labeled hyperactive, and that's about 10% of the population. So instead of labeling, let's just look at what are they good at? How can they learn best? And the thing is that the majority of inventors, scientists, entrepreneurs, musicians, poets, artists of all kinds, the thinkers, the philosophers, the creative people, these are all people we go, oh, wow, they're amazing, right? When they're adults. But as kids, it's almost like we're punishing them for having these types of strengths.
Well, the sad part is a lot of those people aren't teachers. And if you do have a teacher that's high and curious or spontaneous or imaginative, it's probably not in the public school setting. It's probably homeschooling.
Well, we've done, because when we work with schools, teachers take the self-portrait as well.
Right.
And over again, the majority of teachers are organized.
Organized, exactly.
And supportive, those two. And the majority of kids are not. They're one of these or a combination of these. And so it's really interesting because if you think about it, people that go into teaching are more the organized, right, and supportive types of strengths. And they did good in school. And so now they continue to do good becoming a teacher.
I don't know why I went into teaching, honestly, because that organized is not my strength.
Well, but you're one of the few that we like that when there are other people, because for some reason you had that heart of passing it on and teaching. And so there are always, maybe 10%, 5% that are the curious, spontaneous, imaginative. And those are the teachers, right? That kids will say, I love this teacher.
My teacher.
This teacher does this and that. And and it's so fun and exciting and interesting, right?
No.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I love working with children. I love working with parents. So it's just so rewarding. It's wonderful.
It is. So the students who are not those two are often labeled, as we said before, even dyslexic or learning disabled. They can experience failure almost every day. They don't realize that they're smart. I mean, really brilliant, and they don't know they have limited possibilities. So they grow up believing they have nothing to contribute. And we've worked with so many adults who have come for themselves to learn about their own strengths. And they're still stuck in 5th grade or 3rd grade or whatever grade when they thought that was when they learned that they were not very smart.
Correct.
And they couldn't do much. So this is just a quick sample of what you might do with the different dispositions. So if you were learning about, something in science, it's ocean study in science, let's say. So the curious person, the first one, would maybe invent, draw, or make a new kind of sea creature. And this symbol stands for the organized, list the major ocean and seas of the world, because they like doing the facts and information, that kind of thing. The imaginative might draw, paint, or make a scrapbook or collage. The supportive might collaborate with some other people on a project. And the spontaneous might write a rap song or put a play together or do some kind of a demonstration. So that's just a quick idea of how you can customize. They're still learning the same stuff, but in different ways, and showing you what they learned in different ways. So then the modalities, these are usually when people say learning styles or learning strengths, most people only know about modalities. And these are the modalities, how your brain takes in information. But as you can see in our approach, we say that there's more to it. And that's why we have the dispositions, the talents, and those other things you saw in the chart at the beginning. So modalities are information processing equipment. What's the best way for your brain to take in and process ideas, information, and learning of any kind? And so we have the listening and verbal, the people who get it really well when they can listen, audiobooks, lectures, videos. Verbal means you have to say it out loud to really get it. And, some people, how they sort of walk and talk to themselves, that's that. But they can also record themselves, like when you're studying for a test. You can read out loud to yourself. You can discuss with others or teach someone. 85% of classroom instruction requires the listening modality, but about 20% of learners have that strength.
Wow.
So that puts it in perspective. And then there's the picture modality: illustrations, images, charts, graphs, maps, videos. Flashcards with words don't work for a picture learner. Words are not pictures. Right. So maybe we can do one podcast sometime about reading, because reading and spelling, people think that, he's visual, you use flashcards. No, visual means picture.
Right.
Words are not pictures, and they're gobbledygook. They're all of these little symbols, and to some people, they mean nothing until they've really figured out the code, so to speak. There is a print learner. So I'm a print learner, and that's a person for whom reading comes naturally or pretty easily. And of course, they get good information when they can read anything.
Mm-hmm.
But 95% of school studies, even at home, if you use traditional materials, require print. And many more students are picture learners than print learners.
Mm-hmm.
The movement modalities, so there's whole body where you use your, you go on a field trip, or you make a giant clock and you can walk and become the hands of the clock, that kind of thing, or build something. Hands-on, where you make models, you use clay, you're taking something apart. Sketching, drawing, and doodling are part of that. And then there's the writing learner, and that's taking notes, making outlines. And the writing learner usually also is pretty easily learns to spell, because when they write it, they can remember it.
Right.
And so if you're not a writing learner, you're not a good speller. And so to make your non-spellers write the word over and over again, I can tell you that does not work.
Mm-hmm.
They might learn 1 or 2 words like that, but when I went to school, they made the kid whatever they missed on spelling tests, they had to write 100 times.
Yeah, no.
They still couldn't spell, right? So
That
doesn't work. Don't do that.
I do love that the multisensory approach through like Orton Gillingham, because of the interactive pieces. Like if we're spelling a word, we'll chop it out, we'll sound it out, we'll make a connection to the body. We might spell the word in Play-Doh or write it in the sand,
right?
Write it in the air. I mean, but just to write it over and over, no, it doesn't. They have to say it. They have to tap it. I love tapping out sounds. I see my 5th and 6th graders tapping out sounds now.
That's
like,
great. Yeah.
Oh, it's so, and I'm like, do not be embarrassed. I have to tap sounds.
No, and the equivalent of that is adding on your fingers. There's nothing wrong with that.
I know we have to teach them
doing that. No, because we have built-in abacus in a way, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So 50 to 60% of people are whole body, hands-on learners. So that's, more than half of the population usually needs to move or do something in order to learn best. And of course, in our materials for learning for regular school, it's print, listening, and writing are the big deals. But the actual population, 60 to 70% are hands-on and whole body, and 20% picture learners. So we have to take that into account. Now, these are our surroundings, the environment, and I'm just going to go quickly through these because we want to get to, coaching and how we can help families. But basically, it's just that our surroundings can really affect how we learn. And for some people, it affects them more than others. Schools think quiet, sitting up, and being alone is the magic formula. But for many people, they need music or some kind of noise, or standing up at a, like a drafting table type thing where it's a tall table, or even sitting on a beanbag chair, or they need dim light, or the warm temperature doesn't do it for them, or if they're cold, they can't learn. So all of these things can be looked at, and you can't change every single thing, but it starts the conversation. And for some people, they couldn't care less if, the room was purple or whatever. But maybe for that one person, I've had families tell me, oh my gosh, when we changed the tablecloths on the table, all of a sudden they sat there and did their work. Because before that, they didn't realize I hate this color, but nobody's tuned into that. Like, it's really affecting them. So it could be that simple, just to change the color of something for some students.
I have a great story around that real quick. So in Solomar, we have a kiddo just started homeschooling this last year, and mom could not get him on board for anything. He is on the spectrum, but he just couldn't. And I said, well, tell me about where he's learning, what his space looks like. Well, he kind of shares a desk with his brother. So, of course, I wiped all that out and ended up getting mom buying one of those border divider things.
Yeah, the Carol. It's called a Carol, I think.
The Carol, yeah. So just to have his space. Brother moved to a different space. Brother, it wasn't being homeschooled, but this guy needed his space. Do you know, after she bought him his pencils, his materials, all of his things. The day after they set that up, he was up at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing his school, sitting at his desk. No one was telling him what to do. It was amazing. It was like night and day transformation.
Yeah, sometimes just something like that can change everything. And and he probably feels important, like going to work, this is my purpose, and
this is my space, right? Yeah.
And again, that might not work for everybody. Another kid might like being in the corner under the table,
right?
Lying there doing their thing with a clipboard. So but I love that. I love that.
He was high on organized in the self-portrait, very high. So I knew that was a telltale sign.
Yeah, there you go.
Get him in space. Yep.
Okay, interests are our greatest motivators. Whenever you can bring interests in, it'll drive learning like nothing else. And so please don't take things away like, you can't do soccer until you can spell this word or something like that. Because the interests are what's going to drive the student. And you can incorporate their interests. For example, well, first I'll say that it just leads to resentment. Yeah. It doesn't motivate you if things are taken away.
Right.
It just doesn't. So, but you can integrate things like if they like cooking, do the chemistry of cooking, the history of horses, the physics of skateboarding. I've done all of this with my students. There are books and materials for anything, any of these kinds of approaches. Put on skits, create games, all of that. So you can integrate what they like into the different subjects. And talents are natural gifts. They come easily. People don't always want to go into their talents. So that could be a problem if a parent is forcing you to, you're good at math, so you should be a mathematician. Maybe you are good, but you're not interested in that.
You have to have the interest. The interest piece
has to be careful, but here are some of the talents that, And so again, you can weave these in. When a child has a talent and is interested, then that makes for a powerful motivation as well.
Yes.
Okay. So the self-portrait power traits assessment that you mentioned, it's for 8 years to adults. It is online. And it looks at all of these areas. So it makes it easy for you. Now, you don't have to do this. You can, if you're a good observer of your kids and, you probably already know some things. Like you probably already know that when your child doodles, he's really listening to you and it's helpful and it's better than if you make him just sit there and stare at you, right? But here's the thing. You might know that, but you might think, but that's not right. How can I have him doodle when he's supposed to be listening to me? That's not right. So that's what these things give you permission and say, yes, no, that is exactly what he needs, or a squeeze ball or something to twirl.
I have my squeeze ball right here.
Hello. Fidgets, right? Because we don't say, if you know someone who knits or crochets, and do you know anybody like that who watches television or carries on a conversation while they're doing that?
Right.
I have never heard an adult say to another adult, stop crocheting and pay attention. Because you just know that their hands are busy and their whole focus is on whatever is going on. And that's the same thing for kids who need that kind of thing.
Yeah. And some teachers or, helpers or whatever are very hung up on that piece of they're not giving me eye contact on the playground when I'm talking to them.
Right.
Well, they are diagnosed with autism, and that's a goal that we're working on, but it's not something that's so easy. So we have to look at other ways of listening to each other. And are they paying attention even though they're looking down or they're looking up? You know, be aware and be present with them. And I just want to add before we go a little bit further that parents, you alluded to this earlier, that parents often teach in the way that they were taught. And I really want to say that again, because I try to bring that up as much as possible on this podcast. And anytime I get an opportunity to talk to parents, we have to change the paradigm of our thinking, of how we teach our children. And I've spoken to parents who have said, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if this is right. Well, first you have to understand how your child is taking in information. And that's, you know, the beauty of what we're trying to do here today, because if we just do it, and this, you know, this was real for me too, as a teacher. So before I was trained in all of this, you trained me and certified and all that. I taught how I learned. You know, I was a good teacher, but I didn't ever have the bandwidth or the wherewithal or the knowledge, right? I just didn't know that maybe this child is learning. Why aren't they getting this? Why aren't they remembering this?
Right.
You know, I was talking to a dad today who said that, oh, for Christmas, the kids got these computers and they have to do all this learning before they can play the games. And I said, but the question is, are they really learning it? Are they really, why don't you ask questions about what they just had to learn?
Yeah.
And if your child is not learning it and holding on to it and processing it, that's not their modality. Maybe they can learn it for a couple of seconds or just grasp it enough to play the games, but are they really learning? And that's another podcast. So we'll move on.
Yeah, well, and I got all A's, but it's because I could memorize. I just memorized everything the teacher wanted, and I was a good writer. So I could just do that. But, you know, like an hour later, I forgot everything because I had to go on to the next test and the next test. But as I said before, there were students getting D's and F's that weren't good at taking the test, but they knew the information.
But they knew that that's such an incredible,
they weren't able to give it back in that way.
I know.
So when you're stuck, you know, these are some real issues where go back and go, where's the student stuck? Where's the teacher stuck? Where are you stuck as the teacher? Look for clues. If you have used the self-portrait, look for clues. Or if you listen to this podcast, think about the different modalities and dispositions we've talked about and the characteristics and think, okay, what are some clues of how my student or my child learns? And then if you can go to Power Traits for Life, and there's a lot of information there. There are some guides to different ways of teaching for the different dispositions and modalities. And discuss with your student, because often they come up with the best solutions when you're, you know, when you're stuck. So we've had lots of testimonials. This has opened my eyes to how my son learns. No more yelling to settle down and sit. He needs to move and not have quiet, the total opposite of me. I now offer options of standing and having music playing and, you know, and so on. I think this will totally make our homeschool journey much more enjoyable. And then this one says, we have been so incredibly thrilled with the whole assessment. It's the most wonderful thing. Fantastic experience. It'll make a world of difference for my daughter. I can't tell you how much struggle and frustration we've had for years. This is the answer. So once you really look at who your child is and how they learn, you know, here's what this person said, what a difference when I work with him and his learning style.
Yes.
Delight and motivation.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So Dawn, I know you have Solimar Academy, so there's some slides in here about that if you want to talk about coaching and how you do that. This one shows the high school. There's a K-8 as well as a high school program for customizing. Oops, let me go back here for customizing. So if you want to talk about any of that.
I would love to. First and foremost, I want to say that you are still one of the coaches of Solimar Academy.
Yes, I am.
It's such an honor to work with you and Victoria still.
Oh,
so the way we work is that, when a family comes along, they take the assessment, and, we try to have the parents take it too, because we want to look at you side by side with your child. How do you take in information? How do they, and how can we, connect that bridge? But as a coach, we help design the program. It could be a very personalized program. It can be a very standardized, just academics according to your state. And then we do coaching, either weekly or monthly coaching with your student. Could be bi-monthly. However, there is a tuition associated with the cost, which I think is really, really low still compared to other programs. But we just love working with our families and our kiddos. These are some of the kids that who is the ninth grader? Is that what was her name? Anyway, I know she wasn't one of my students, but I read.
Oh yeah, so these are past students that are on the flyer. So I'm not going to really give their names.
Okay, yeah. I was just wondering.
So there's a ninth grader, 11th grader, and a graduate here.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, and yeah, they all were just shining. That's what happens. And then they start wanting to do stuff that you never thought they would even be interested in.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. It's so exciting. But on our website, some of them have written reviews. So if it's the same person, she wrote a really amazing review about college and being a student that could do way above and beyond her peers because of all that she was able to learn. So it is a unique, different, a lot of programs out there say, oh, customized, personalized. But as an educator, I've worked in charter schools and I've worked with many homeschool families. That's not always the case. Oftentimes in charter schools, they're saying personalized and all that you want, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of expectations. I would honestly say we have more freedom. We're not accredited, so there is that. But it's just a wonderful journey, and I've had so much fun. About 3 or 4 years ago, it's going on 4 years, right? I think so. I took over Solimar, and Mariaemma has been gracious to stay with me, coach our families, and I
love it.
I know you are so good too, and they love you. And anyway, that's about it, really. So hopefully,
and if the kids are younger, then it's it's more coaching with the parent.
Yes, exactly.
And then as they get a little older. I mean, sometimes it's only the parent. If they're like 6 years old, they might be on for, 5 minutes and then go play. And really, you're talking more to the parent where they're saying, well, this works, but this doesn't, or should I do this? And we kind of keep you on track, right?
Right.
And then, sorry.
I have a little family where he comes on and he's very particular. He's highly unorganized about being there for his 30 minutes. When that's done, he's like, I've had enough. And then he walks out. And then Mom and I just continue and we keep talking. Yeah. Sometimes he's listening in the background and he'll say something and I'll say, well, what do you think about that? It's a lot of fun. Actually.
I mean, and that's custom too, depending on the family and the kids and everybody's personalities and strengths. Yeah. So then as they get older, a lot of times the parent does continue to stay on and it's a conversation with everybody.
Right.
I tend to say that, as they get into middle school, high school, then often it's just the student with the coach, because a lot of times the parents want them to have that sort of their own time, with us.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really nice. And also, just for the record, we also do outside coaching with families. You don't have to be in Solimar Academy. We will do this whole assessment. We will coach, get you up and running. We love to work with brand new families who are just starting out and saying, I don't even know where to begin. We'll help you with curriculum. We'll help you with a learning plan for the semesters. What else? Well, we do progress reports, report cards, transcripts. We do that piece. So but aside from that, just coaching. If you're just saying, I need some help getting started, I'm not necessarily wanting to be in a private school, but can you help me? So I've done that as well. Yeah. I know you do that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great resource. So hopefully if anyone's interested, they'll reach out. Now we can answer your questions. And let me just
solarmaracademy.com if you want to just check out that website.
Yeah, and there's my phone number up there too. Also, I'm going to just end here because I know, we have like 4 minutes or something, but let me ask you this last question. How would it behoove a parent, and this is probably simple question, but how would it behoove a parent in their teaching of their child if they knew their own disposition and learning style?
Oh, yeah, I love that question because I think it's almost essential. In fact, just everybody in the family knowing each other's strengths goes a long way toward harmony in the family, or even, figuring out which job each person is going to do, which chores, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. But especially if you're teaching, if you know your own bias, like, oh my gosh, so, there's so many parents that are totally opposite at least one kid. Sometimes they are the same as one child, totally opposite somebody else, And so to know that it's not that they're trying to, get on your nerves. It's just, this is how they are. This is how you are. And so again, I work with all these families, students that are not my modality or my disposition or my talents, but I know what they need. And that's the whole thing. It's what they need to learn, not what you need to learn.
It completely changed everything about my teaching and all my years and experience, especially working with children with autism, because I tend to talk a lot. And when I want to explain things and break things down, and it really taught me that that's not how this child learns. And I'm really working with a student like that, where I create the questions before we meet and I send them to him in an email. Like, this is where we're going to go. This is what. Yes. And I stay on track.
Yeah.
And I know could be a problem.
Yeah. And Dawn, also with your own kids that you homeschooled.
Yes.
It made a difference, right?
It made such a difference. Especially, I'll never forget this with my middle daughter, Annie. She would come home and go into her room and just shut down for a while. And I was like, what's wrong? What happened? How are you today? And ask her all these questions, and not realizing her disposition. She needed to deconnect from people and recharge her little batteries before she could come back out and be a part of her. Terrified that there was something going on. Are you being bullied? What's happening? You know, this is in the latter years when they went to a private school. But yeah, so that really taught me. I remember that all my children took the assessment and teaching me, oh, okay, this is how this child just has to, a little bit of an introvert. And so it was really beautiful that I backed off.
And it shows that this isn't just for school.
No,
this process isn't just for school. In fact, we've had some people say this is better than marriage counseling. We could see right here. Yeah, in those brave families where the dad takes the assessment, all the siblings. I had a little girl say to me one day, I finally understand my dad and my sister. Oh.
Because the dad and the sister were very spontaneous, and her mother were very organized.
Yes.
And they saw those two as the troublemakers.
Yes.
And now I taught them to see them as the joy bringers.
Oh, I love that.
They bring the joy. Oh. And this is the little girl, like in 5th grade, going, you have totally changed the way I see my dad and my sister.
Oh, that is a great way to end this, isn't it?
Okay. Yay. Well, thank you, Mariaemma. I love you. And I just appreciate you so much, your gifts to the world.
Oh,
I hope that everybody has gotten something out of this today, and we'll reach out to you or to Solimar if you want any more information or if we can help you in any way. So God bless you, and thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com. This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.